Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to Evolving Consciousness. In today's video, we are going to talk about the big three of Stoic philosophy. Now, to begin with, Stoicism, a Stoic philosophy, dates back to 2000 BC, and it is coming from it's coming from a hierarchy or a tradition of Greek and Roman philosophers. Philosophers were not only about philosophy, but these philosophers were emperors. They were the people of their era in terms of material opulences. They are regarded as the most majestic kings of their times, and the great aspect or the most distinguishing factor of Stoicism is the fact that it's absolutely pragmatic. And one thing you'll realize about Stoicism is they have a very refined understanding of human emotions, which is also relevant to today's times and is also going to be relevant for many more years to come. Now, this is a distinguishing and a refining aspect of Stoicism which captured my own personal attention. And today we are going to talk about the big three disciplines which Stoicism preaches about or propagates, and how does it encompass every person's life in a day-to-day setting. Now, to lay the foundation of this pragmatic philosophical approach of Stoicism. Now, Stoicism talks about the inner battles which every human being goes through. Now, some of us think that we are not in a war-like situation. But what if I told you, let me give you a narrative. Each human being is given the 24 hours of time frame. And in those 24 hours of time frame, we are always stuck in a dilemma. Most of us are probably stuck in a conflict between choices. We are always having a war within ourselves. People who are raising their level of consciousness through various practices or through various practices of inner contemplation, they will be able to resonate or they will be able to understand as to what I am referring to. People who don't have any trace of consciousness, probably they won't be able to relate to what I am saying. But there comes a time in those 24 hours, we are always given two choices or two routes for a given particular task, wherein we need to take a decision, and that 5-second window of opportunity decides the result. Now, let me give you a very simple example. Let's say a person is on a strict diet so that he comes to a certain level of physicality and he has a certain health goal, and as a requirement for that, achieving that health goal at that fitness regime, he is sort of living by a discipline that I will not have anything which contains sugar in it. Now, a situation arises wherein he has to go out with this group of friends, and these friends are consuming ice cream or something sweet in nature, and he has that 5-second window of opportunity where he has to choose whether I should succumb to the temptation and take up that, or the other choice would be to resist that temptation and say a firm no. Because most of us don't know when to say no and when to not say no. Stoicism is talking about a lot of these subtle struggles which we human beings go through at conscious and unconscious levels throughout our life. And if you are someone who is attuned to hear the voice of his consciousness, the voice of his conscious, you will realize there are many such situations in life where you are always bothered by two conflicting opinions and you need to make the right choice. In Stoicism, it's all about having a sense of temperance, having a sense of control over the choices which seem to be alluring at the moment but need not necessarily be good for a well-being. Now, coming back to the big three. Now, number one of the big three is control your perceptions, a developed, a refined perception. Now, in my earlier videos also, in many of the videos where I talked about different legends, hosting from Steve Jobs, Ratan Tata, and man with the only hand, the legendary athlete, who after getting dismissed so many times, he still becomes the world champion in pistol shooting. One thing you will find common among all these legends is the power of perception, the power of looking at a different narrative. What the world calls a catastrophe, a failure, these legends have the ability to view opportunities in those challenges. And if we look at our day to day life, we are all bombarded with situations which exercise or which test the power of our perception. Now, let us say that you're commuting to your workplace and you are suddenly crossed by a person who is not supposed to cross, and you suddenly get agitated and you're fuming with anger. Now, one thing you'll realize that fuming in anger and abusing or doing something, talking very bad about that person is not going to undo that thing which just happened. This is what is called control of perception. Instead, we can exercise compassion as to probably that person was in a dire need, and that's why he did what he did. Now, some of you might view this as a weak way of responding, but this is not a weak way of responding. To the contrary, this is the right way of responding. Reason being that the anger which you are going to create is not going to benefit you in any way. To the contrary, it will probably create a lot of toxic chemicals in your system. And research has proven, and there are countless books which back this fact, that anger and fear are the number one emotions, are the number one source emotions which are responsible for all the diseases. The 95% of all diseases are known to be psychosomatic, and anger and fear are the root emotions of these diseases. So, perception, controlling the perception, viewing a thing, a situation in a certain positive light is an art in itself. And the more we develop our perception, the more we hone our perception, the better we become in trying to view a situation in a different light. There's this beautiful example which I have given in my previous videos, and it captures the point of perception very well. Suppose a person approaches a building from the standpoint of approaching the building from the road. The building seems majestic and huge, but the same building, when viewed through an aeroplane, and a person is commuting through an aeroplane, if he looks the building from that standpoint of reference, that same building seems puny. Now, this is a very symbolic example to give a very solid understanding that perception is everything. Reality is non-existential. Perception is reality. If you look at the way the way the politics is run in our country and the way elections are won, it's all about perception management. The political party which is able to develop a positive perception wins ultimately. So, perception is essentially reality, and it's up to us whether we want to hone our perceptions in a way which serves us, or we want to hone our perceptions in a way which impedes us. I want to give an example of the 16th President of the United States, Mr. Abraham Lincoln. Now, somebody who would have read about Abraham Lincoln would have realized that his life was nothing short of catastrophic failure. His entire life was a succession of different failures. Probably people who haven't read about Abraham Lincoln would not know that Abraham Lincoln was demoted in military. When he sort of entered the military, he rose to the level of captain, but when he retired from military, he was demoted to an inferior role. He lost the presidential election 8 times in a row. His personal life was an absolute mess. But still, after all these failures, he still didn't lose hope. He still became the 16th president of United States. Such is the power, such is the grit and resilience which legends exhibit. Because they were able to exhibit these qualities, reason being, they had mastered the art of perception. And this is the first point which Stoicism is talking about. Control your perceptions. Now, point number 2, and this is again a very interesting and a very important point, is direct your actions for the common good. Now, Mahatma Gandhi's infamous story, the way he was ousted out of the train by the British Empire, that sort of put the seed or gave the foundation for the entire freedom movement. Now, if it was an average Joe, he would feel infuriated and probably he would have forgotten it in a day or two. But Mahatma Gandhi thought that this is a moment wherein it's not only a question of my freedom, but it is also the question of freedom of all my other fellow countrymen. Because if you are only focused on your good, without considering how I can serve as an instrument for the common good, then that is a very hollow way of living. Because we human beings are naturally designed to be of help to people. And you'll realize this, and there was also a study which said that people who were patients of mental ailments, one distinguishing feature which was common to all of them is they were very much selfish. Selfishness was a prime hue of their demeanor. And they never thought about the common good. They never had any perception of world beyond themselves. It was always about them. And the people became so obsessed about their own self, they completely mess it up. Not only they mess it up in their own psyche, but they sooner or later become failures in their own understanding, failures in their own measure. Hence, it is very important to direct your actions to the common good. This is what is talked about in point number 2 of the big 3. And when you have this kind of a focus of doing common good, nature supports you. The fact that we all are inhabitants of nature, and nature is always teaching us so many subtle principles and values. If you look at the sun does not distinguish a sinner from a person who considers himself a monk. The sun is very equanimous when it comes to giving the sunlight. If you go and stand under the tree does not say that this person is a good man and I give him shade, and this person is not a good man, so I'll stop giving him shade. It's very just. Nature is absolutely just, and the quality of nature is it's always about giving. And it doesn't really expect a lot in return. And the more we are in tune with nature, when a lot of people talk about the scientific benefits of spending time in nature, and it is absolutely correct that every human being should be connected with nature. But more than that, beyond that, we should try to imbibe, we should try to observe what nature is trying to teach us. There are so many subtle lessons which nature always tries to teach us, even though it's not preaching. But just observing nature will give you a lot of wisdom, will teach you how life should be conducted. And nature's quality is always about thinking of the common good. And Stoicism also talks about this second essential big 3 component, which says, direct your actions to the good of the common. When we have this kind of a mindset, when we are not only focused on our good, but on the mutual good, then it's a win-win situation, and the more you are an instrument of service to people around you, you become a force to reckon. If you look at any person who has become legendary in any sphere of life, They always had this underlying emotion, this underlying purpose in their mind, that what can I do to the world? Legends don't think what they can get, legends think how they can contribute to the world. Now, coming to the third point of the big three philosophy of Stoics. Now, the point 3 is very interesting, and it says, willingly accept what's outside of your control. Now, this is something which most of us don't want to accept. Because the fact is, we don't even understand what are the things which come under the ambit of our control and what are the things which don't come under the ambit of our control. And the number one reason for anxiety and frustration is when a person tries to control what is beyond his control. Now, let's say a person is commuting to a certain place via flight. Now, for some reason, the flight gets delayed, or the passenger misses the flight. Now, no amount of yelling and hurling at the cabin crew or the airlines is going to help that matter. This seems common, but common sense is not so common these days. This seems common sense, but common sense is not so common these days. But we still yell. We still feel justified in ranting. We still feel justified in abusing someone. Because that abuse and ranting is giving us a certain sense of meaning. We feel that we should be agitated. But one thing we fail to understand and acknowledge is no amount of yelling is going to undo what has just happened. The best we can do is to see what is the things which are under our control, and probably we can think about the other options at our disposal. But how many of us think in those terms? We always want to try to control what is not in our control, and that is the reason why we all are chronic patients of anxiety and frustration. Now, this is a whole new dimension and a huge topic in itself. There is this beautiful prayer called Serenity Prayer, which talks about giving us the understanding to accept what we have and to also accept things which are beyond our control. Because if there is someone who thinks everything can be controlled as per his whims and fancies, either that person is like an ostrich putting his head in the ground and not wanting to face reality, and the person is clouded in some kind of an ignorance of his own world, of his own thought processes. And this third point is absolutely instrumental for anyone to imbibe a life of tranquility. A life of serenity becomes a natural offspring of his demeanor once he completely not only understands this, but makes it a part of his psyche and understand what are the things which can be controlled, what are the things which cannot be controlled. And the more he brings about this distinction with utter clarity, the more his life becomes absolutely stress-free. Hope my today's video brought a lot of clarity on the big three, the three big disciplines which Stoicism preaches about. If you found my video useful, do share it with a couple of your friends. Also, subscribe to my channel if you are finding my videos interesting and fascinating. Thank you so much, and I'll meet you in the next video.